Peace, peace, good people, and welcome back to another episode of Honoring Our Ancestral Practices. I know it has been a minute, but this is your host, Alexandra, and I'm here to share with you how we honor our traditional practices through art, food, and traveling, all while not breaking the bank. So for this episode, I am going to talk about a trip that I did last year in 2025, in June of 2025, to Guatemala. I have to preface this by saying Guatemala and Central America, okay, were nowhere on my radar. Not in a bad way, not as in like I never wanted to visit or what have you. It just was not on my radar. But as fate would have it, and this is how a lot of things come about in my life, on 3 different occasions, 3 different people I know sent me a post through Instagram. They DM'd me a post about a residency in Antigua, Guatemala. Now, after the second time, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Someone else sent me this. Now, once I got it the third time, I was like, all right, universe, I hear you. I hear you. So I looked into this residency called Gracia. I researched all of it, like everything, all the information I could find. I researched about it on this website, Instagram, looked into the past artists who have gone there. Side note, I may do an episode about how to find residencies as a way to do this work, right? As a way to learn traditional art practices, study, research, all of that. So I researched Gracia and I was like, okay, I like what I'm seeing. Like this really does seem legit. So I emailed the founder to just, talk through some things, set up a time to have like an info session, what have you. And the price was affordable. So what I'll talk about in this episode is what I did while I was at Gracia for 2 weeks, some of the places that I really enjoyed and that I feel that if you are ever in Guatemala, specifically Antigua, you should check these places out as well. And then I'll also break down the cost of how much it costs for me to do this. After speaking with the founder of Gracia, who is from Guatemala and created the residency as a way to allow people to come to Guatemala and get immersed in the culture and the landscape of Antigua while supporting Guatemalan artists, creatives, administrative workers. So the entire residency is run by Guatemalan people, which of course I appreciate, because whenever I travel, I like for my money to touch as much of the locals' hands as possible. So the way the residency is set up, it is set up as an independent residency, which means they don't really ask you to come and work on a series of paintings for a show or work on a dance piece for exhibition. Like, you're not required to do anything. So you can do as much as you want or as little as you want. And so for me, because I had never been to Guatemala, let alone Central America, I began looking up things about Guatemalan cuisine, right? Because as y'all know, I'm really into food, all aspects of food, growing it, eating it, how people are talking about it, how people commune around it. And so I found that as I was looking up Guatemalan cuisine, something interesting was happening, is that everything I was looking up kept diverting me to Mexico. And I was like, this is interesting because, one, Guatemalan people have a cuisine. So I was like, internet, stop playing with me. Stop making it seem like Guatemalan people are just eating Mexican food. Like, now, mind you, geographically, if you look at a map, Guatemala is right next to Mexico. So of course it makes sense that they share similar cuisines. But I'm also like, Guatemala is its own place also. Now, yes, we know borders are made up and all that stuff. But where we are now, in this present day, I was like, there is a cuisine there. And so as I was talking to the founder of the residency, I mentioned to her that I wanted to research more and learn more about Guatemalan cuisine while I was there. And so she recommended that I look up, there was an episode, I think it was on Hulu. It's either on Hulu or Netflix. It might be Hulu. But it was an episode or a series they did on breads. And one of the episodes was in Guatemala. Like it focused on Guatemala and specifically the tortillas of Guatemala. I watched that and I was like, yes, I'm going to eat all of that when I get there. And then I had also, in my own research, found out about this place called Diaca. So Diaca is a restaurant that is located in Guatemala City, and it is run and owned by Chef Deborah Fadul. And what I really liked about this restaurant was that it was, and she may have been featured in that Hulu show, but what I like about this restaurant is all of the ingredients are sourced from Guatemala. So all the different regions, north, south, east, west. And I appreciated that Chef Deborah Fadul, as someone who was trained in like French culinary tradition, she went back to Guatemala and decided to look into her cultural cuisine and uplift that. I appreciate that she took the time to really study where she was from, because a lot of times I feel like we take for granted the cuisine or even anything really, like the art traditions, the music traditions. Sometimes we can not realize what we have until we either don't have it no more or something else begins to inundate our space, right? But I appreciate that she went back to the country where she's from and really started researching her own country's agriculture and who the producers are and what they were growing and why they were growing it. Her restaurant was one of my first stops because I was flying into Guatemala City. So for the 2 weeks of the residency, I decided to focus on understanding more of Guatemalan cuisine, also learning about the textiles and the history of it in Guatemala, because that was also part of the residency option that I chose, because you could do an independent residency where you're just doing your thing, or you could add on a component where you could learn traditional weaving, the backstrap weaving of Guatemala, and also visit the textile museum in Guatemala City. And so I decided to do the second option because, of course, I'm all for any art practice that is done with your hands. It's reliant on your hands, and it's a traditional practice that is usually taught by elders. So for me, I was like, oh, I'm for sure doing that option. And the rest of the time, I was just going to hang out and just really get to know Guatemala and Antigua. So when I landed in Guatemala City, I was picked up by someone on the residency staff. And when I tell you my first stop, like we immediately drove to Diaca because I had made reservations. I think I made reservations for like 12 noon, right? And usually at 12 noon in restaurant industries, that is usually not when it's busy. So for me, I was like, that would be a great time to go experience it because one, I won't have to deal with a big crowd. Usually if they have like a chef's counter or something like that, you can sit and actually talk to the chef and not have to worry about a whole bunch of things going on in the background. And when I got there, I was even more blown away because the interior design of this restaurant, for me, it felt like a museum. It was like every space, every material, every detail was designed with Guatemala in mind. So from the wood that the tables were made out of, the fabric that the napkins were produced from, the forks, the plates, the ceramics. We already know the food is from Guatemala. So it was like everything was intentionally sourced, designed, placed. When I tell you the intentionality was just dripping, it was oozing out of everything. So before I even had my meal, I was asking the chef because I chose to sit at the chef's counter, and I think it had to be like maybe 5 people in there. Like when I went in, so I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. Like it's calm, it's chill, nobody's rushing around, anything like that." So before I sat down at the chef's counter, I asked them if I could just walk around the restaurant, like just really admire the artifacts and the things that were on display and the way the things were displayed. And it was everything from like ceramics, dried corn, clay. There were some plant materials too. The way that they were all positioned and set up, it was kind of like you were in a gallery, but not one of those stuck up galleries. It was like a gallery that felt like you're invited to really take in what you're seeing in front of you. And like, yeah, you couldn't touch anything, of course. I wasn't about to touch nobody's stuff because I didn't want to break nothing. And that's rude. But it invited you to like come in, look at me, spend time around me, like take me in type of thing. So I did that and then proceeded to sit at the chef's counter, and I was given 2 options. So I could either have I believe it was a 6 or 8 course meal or the 12 course. And so me, it being my first time in Guatemala, I was like, we about to do this 12 course. Like, let's just go for it. When I tell y'all, now I know some of y'all may have you've seen those like chef plates where something is like 1 or 2 bites, like it's a small side, like a small bit of food that you could literally eat in 1 or 2 bites. Now, you may think, or at least for me, I was like, oh, 12 courses? I mean, everything is like 1 or 2 bites, so that's like 12 bites of food, right? Y'all, by the 6th course, I was like, all right, so the way this pants zipper is working right now, like the way we gotta loosen up some stuff, cause y'all, I was filled up by course 6. But because I paid for 12, I was like, no, we finna do this, right? Now, I wasn't so filled up to where it was like 1 extra bite would have hurt my stomach, but I could see how savoring the food and being intentional with how I was eating, like it really does fill you up. And so each course, the sous chef, he would come and basically explain everything to me. And this was also the benefit of me eating there at 12 noon. Because if they were busy, he wouldn't be able to do that. He would just maybe tell me the name of the dish and what was in it, and then that was all. But because I was the only one there at the chef's counter, he was able to walk every dish to like around the counter to me and explain every ingredient, where it was sourced, why it was being used. And for me, that made the experience that much better. Now, there were several, I mean, when I tell you all the dishes were good, it was some vegetarian stuff. There was, I think, maybe some that they could have been vegan. There were some meat things, but everything was like beautifully combined, all the flavors, textures were on point, and the portion was really good for a 12 course. And towards the end, it started getting towards the sweet stuff, dessert wise. But there were a couple dishes that stuck out. One of them stuck out to me so much because it actually surprised me. So they had a red snapper ceviche. Now, y'all, I enjoy fish, right? But my body does not always enjoy seafood. So mentally, I'd be like, oh, this fish, like we about to go in. But my body be like, about that food group. So I was already looking at it like, the ceviche, I don't know about this, right? And one thing I was not gonna do is like turn away food. Now, if it was something I for sure didn't eat, I would of course politely be like, okay, this is something I don't eat, because they had different types of meats there. So it's like, let's say I didn't eat beef or something like that. Then I would say, okay, I don't eat beef. And I believe the chef even asked, like, is there anything you don't eat? And seafood is becoming one of those. It's a little sad, but I don't know. I'm just like, you know what? I'm listening to my body. it does what it does. Okay, so off that tangent. So this ceviche comes, and it was a red snapper ceviche. And for those of you who don't know what ceviche is, it's usually a fish that is not cooked. It's put in citrus. Usually there's a citrus, there's a lime or something in seasoning. So like herbs, spices, what have you. And that is basically what quote unquote cooks the fish, right? So you're not necessarily eating it raw like sushi, but you're also not necessarily eating it cooked like how if you're used to having a red snapper that's been baked in the oven or something like that. So I see it and I'm like, okay, sometimes, my body be like, we for it, sometimes not. When I tell you that was the best ceviche I have ever had in my life, I was like, I think I just need to come back to Guatemala whenever I want ceviche. Because I have had several versions of ceviche, y'all. But that one, I was like, child, this right here, I could eat this every day. And it was nothing but like a 2-bite portion, which to me was perfect. I was like, that's literally all I need. But that thing, I think I ate it in 1 bite. But that ceviche was amazing. There was also a chili dish that it was a chili pepper, a variety found in Guatemala, but they stuffed it with chocolate. Y'all, another food group I love is chocolate. Okay, the best chocolate, hands down, and I always tell people this. It comes from South America. Now we know Central America because Guatemala's in there. Africa and the Caribbean. Fight your mama on that. Those places, those regions have the best chocolate, mainly because they're not so refined. So you still taste the cacao versus a lot of European chocolates. They tend to refine them so much that it's like the end result, yeah, it looks glossy and it looks all pretty, but the underlying cacao foundational taste is no longer there. So all you're getting is like sugar in like a little taste of chocolate, right? So anywho, this chili with this chocolate stuffed in it, bomb. Obviously the corn was good. Every tasting dish I had that had corn, which is what I would later come to learn about the significance of corn in Guatemala and the varieties of corn that are grown there. Yes, I did know corn was a thing in Mexico. I did know this. But when I started to see the differences in the varieties and how the corn was prepared, Guatemalan corn, next level. And I'm sure there are other regions too of Central and South America where there's different varieties of corn that we're not used to seeing that aren't like mass produced. But the corn in Guatemala, next level. So after Diaca, I then was driven to the residency home in Antigua. And I believe it was like a 45-hour drive. So I took a nice nap in that backseat of that car. Because one thing I'm going to do is nap in the car if I'm not driving, right? We get to the house, and the way this residency is set up, there are 1 or 2 other artists who are there with you at the same time. So in my case, there was 1 other artist. Shout out to Bella. She's freaking awesome. We are friends for life. So she was there with me, and we were doing the residency together for the same amount of time, 2 weeks. And she is a photographer. I'm a more painter, drawer, visual artist, what have you, all the things. So we got along pretty well, which was great because I felt like the way I don't know if they match people up or if it just works that way that we both happened to be available that time, but it worked out beautifully. And so Bella was doing the independent research residency where she was just focusing on her work and like really getting to know Antigua. Whereas I had added on the textile component. So maybe 2 or 3 days into the residency, it was pretty quick. is when I then went to the weaving space where I was going to learn the traditional backstrap weaving. And it's in San Antonio, Aguascalientes. And it's called Chocohol Juyu. And it's run by three indigenous women who started it in order to preserve the traditional Guatemalan backstrap weaving practice. So while I was there were also like young kids who were there learning, and other people in the community, because they started it for their community and anyone who wanted to learn. So I believe it was a total of, I want to say 3 or 4 days I went and spent about, it had to be 4 or 5 hours each day, like just learning how to weave, like weaving. It was beautiful to see the process come together. And I've woven before. So the first time I actually did any weaving, it was at another residency, and it was on, like, I call it a big grandmama loom because it was a floor loom. That's what I think it's called, the official name. But it was on a huge loom. And then I also built a small handheld one that is like travel size that I've also woven things on there. But this one in Guatemala, what makes it unique is, one, is also portable, but it's backstrap. So it wraps around like your lower back, and then you secure it on a wall like high above you. And then the weaving part is like right in front of you. So that part was very fun to learn. I will say the one part, when I do return to Guatemala, because Guatemala will see my face again, I am going to return to this space to learn some more, because for the life of me, whenever I am shown how to set up a loom, I be following it. Like, I be following the teacher. I be following the instructor. Now, 2 minutes after, when we get to like actually weaving, I be like, now how did we set this up again? So to all the weavers out there, I appreciate the work y'all do. Because to set up a loom and to take a loom down, child, that is some work. Now, I will weave the middle part all day long. But when it comes to having to like take it off or like set it up, that part I still need some help with. I've also woven while I was in Ghana too. And that was really fun. And that was a whole other type of process of weaving. But that'll be in a different episode. And so I did that for about 3-4 days. And then I also got the opportunity to visit the textile museum in Guatemala City. So I think it was the second week of the residency. There was transportation provided, and I went back into Guatemala City and spent time at the museum. I think I spent a couple hours because I was like reading every label, and to see the history and read about the history of textiles and the clothing that was worn. This is not unique to Guatemala. Like, you'll find this in several cultures, indigenous, all over the world, where there's a particular way of dressing a textile that was used, whether it was woven, whether it was sewn, what have you. But it was beautiful to see and to learn about what the form of dress and the pride in the textiles that were used in Guatemala in the past. I mean, even in the, not sculptures, but the artifacts that they will find that depicted like the Mayan people, and you could even see the textiles on the people in those artifacts. And I'm like, y'all, our DNAs and the depths of the skill and artistry and technique in our cultures, it runs so deep to where I just be like, I love us. Like, all these cultures that have these deep, rich traditions that are still going, even if it's just a couple people who have a collective that keep it going, like that means so much to me, and I appreciate it so much. And so the Textile Museum in Guatemala City is a must. If you are into textiles or just want to learn, that is a must see. Another thing that I did was, because I was interested in the food aspect, I ate a lot while I was out there. Because in researching culinary traditions, you have to eat a lot. There were a list of places that I went to. Another one of them after Diaca that I went to was a space called El Comalote. This was the one that was featured in the bread episode, or the bread series that was on Hulu. And the founder of that, Gabriela Perdomo, an amazing woman. She could be my peer. Like, we're in the same age group. But I remember seeing her featured on the episode. And I was like, okay, when I get to Guatemala, I'm going to go to this space. So funny enough, right before I went to visit, I was looking up the website, like while I was in Guatemala, and I saw that they had a workshop. And the workshop was basically like, you come and learn how to make the tortillas on the comal. And so, of course, me being me, I was like, hey, could I also like pay a little extra and learn from one of the chefs there, like how to make a traditional Guatemalan dish? And they were very accommodating. I was texting them on WhatsApp. Very accommodating. They were like, sure, like you could do the tortilla workshop and then we could design a workshop after that for you. And that's exactly what I did. So I got there, and Gabriela was very generous with her time. And I really appreciated that, because she took the time before my hands touched any corn. She took the time to sit down and really explain to me all the varieties of corn that she sources for the women to work with. So she runs this space where it's predominantly women who are working it and making the tortillas and all of the food, basically. But she is preserving a way of making tortillas in Guatemala, how they make tortillas. And theirs are thicker than the ones that I've had in, let's say, some Mexican restaurants, or even some other Latin American restaurants that I've gone to. The Guatemalan tortillas are nice and thick. Oh, so good. But she took the time to bring out the varieties of corn. Like, she actually brought out the dried varieties for me to see. So there's the red, black, yellow that we know. And then there was a white one, I believe. There was one that was mixed. It was like a black and a red, like it was a cross, because the growers of it had crossed it while they were growing it. So they basically planted the seeds a certain way to where they would like cross-pollinate or what have you. But that corn, one, it was beautiful to look at just when it was dried. And so she walked me through their process of the nixtamalization, which I also learned from some indigenous chefs here in the States who walked me through how they do it with the ash. And so similar process, but the technique of forming the tortilla and putting it on the comal, what I really liked about it was that it was, and this is what I like about a lot of the practices that I study, is that they're embodied. So you can, like, they were walking me through the steps, like they were telling me the steps of, this is how you make it. You get a piece, you get this much masa in your hand, and then you do the slap. There's a slapping technique. But what I thought was so cool, because while they were doing it, it was like a beat going. And I was like, yo, the rhythm we have, all of our cultures, like we all have these rhythms and beats that we move to. So while they were doing it, while the women were doing it, that's all I kept thinking about. I was like, look at our rhythms and our beats that we move by. So they were walking me through, like they were talking me through the steps. But the thing about it, because it looks like it could be easy. But then when I tried it, I was like, oh, this is a little harder than I thought. Like the technique Mine's like it kept tearing in my hands. And the women were saying, we've been doing this since we were 6 and 7. So by the time we got to teenager age, like we had this mastered. And you could tell just by watching their hands and the way they were moving, the rhythm of it all, and the pace they were going. Like, one, you knew you were off if you couldn't keep up with if you couldn't keep up with that rhythm, I was like, that's an automatic sign that, like, you're off pace. So for me, I was keeping up with the rhythm, but the hand technique, like the way you form your hands. And it seems like such a simple thing, but these are, like, their hands hold that memory. And for that, I can really respect that. You know what I'm saying? Because somebody else could be like, they just making tortillas. Like, I could just pay $1 for that and be done. But it's like when that memory, the memory that's in their hands, when it's transferred into the ingredients and into the cooking, into the food, and then you consume that, there is something... spiritual is not the word, but there's something that is happening there. Like, there's the communication that is happening between you two, that when you eat really fast and you're just like, oh, this is just cheap stuff. Like, this is simple. It's just corn. Like, you can miss that. But when you eat with intention and you're really honoring the food and the ingredient and the people who sustain these traditions and sustain the growing of these ingredients, it hits a little different, right? And I also think it be clearing my skin up, y'all. Because when I be traveling, I'm like, my skin, everything just gets real clear. My hair grows, my skin be clear. I'm like, there's something there. And I don't feel that I need to, like, give it a name, because I'm not academic like that. Like, I don't feel like everything got to be categorized. But I'm just like, you can't lie to me. There's something there. English may not have the word to describe what exactly it is, but there's a communication happening between the person cooking the food and the person consuming it. So El Comalote is for sure another place that you must visit. And the funny thing about me asking about the workshop was that Gabriela told me that it was literally the night before that she activated that workshop button, because she was like, I'm not sure if people are going to want to come or how it's going to go. And she was like, we put it up, and then all of a sudden you messaged us. And I'm like, see that right there? Divine alignment. Okay, that is what I call that. And so she also offered me the opportunity, I believe it was to come back like the next day or 2 days later, to learn with a chef a Guatemalan dish. And I had already went to a bookstore in the neighborhood and bought a Guatemalan cookbook. And so I bought it primarily to see the dishes that are eaten around Guatemala, because it's broken up by region. And then I also bought it because I wanted to pick some of the dishes from the book and see if they could teach me some of those. And so when I get there, Gabriela is there because she's helping translate. And then one of the women who works at El Comalote is there. And forgive me, I do not remember her name. But she was a very, very sweet woman. And we decided to make pepián, which is it has a lot of tomato, chili, but it wasn't spicy. And it also usually has chicken in there and veggies too. And so one thing I asked for before we started the workshop is I asked the chef to speak only in Spanish, because yo soy aprendiendo español and I'm in Guatemala. So I'm not about to ask this chef to do this whole workshop, especially when it comes to traditional skills that I be learning. I'm like, the people who keep these skills alive, they're not trying to get a PhD in English, okay? They're keeping their traditions alive. So most of the time, they don't speak English. And to me, that is A-okay. So I told Gabriela, I was like, have her speak English. Even though Gabriela was translating, I was like, I'm learning. And that's the thing. Most of the time when I'm hearing Spanish spoken, I can translate it in my head, I just can't respond back. So I told her, I was like, just speak Spanish. Like, don't even be trying to say nothing in English. Like, ain't nobody trying to stress you out. We in Guatemala, so speak the way you want to speak. And she really appreciated that, actually. She thanked me a couple times throughout the workshop and was just like, I appreciate that you asked me to just speak Spanish. Because even though I know like a couple things in English, like it would have been a struggle, but I appreciate that you're learning the language. And that's one thing about me too, is that when I travel, I am going to know phrases in that language. I am not someone who believes that when you travel, everybody got to speak English. When you go somewhere, learn a couple phrases in the native tongue. It is a sign of respect. I always think it's good practice to learn even just a couple phrases, if not the entire language of the place you want to go, especially if you want to research and study or sit with people and learn from them. So before we started making the pepian, or as we were making it, she was like, okay, so we have to make the chili sauce, like the chili base, and we had to basically ground up the chilies that we were using. And she was like, you want to use the blender? Or do you want to get down on the floor and use the mortar or the grinding tool that they have that is traditionally what is used? And I was like, well, how did y'all used to make pepian? And she was like, we get on the floor with the mat. And I was like, well, then that's what I'm doing. I can appreciate a blender all day long. Okay, I love a good ninja. But if we're making pepian, I want to learn it how you traditionally make it. So she laid out the mat and she put out the volcanic. It's like I've seen it used when Mexican chefs have made mole. And so it's that same stone, like that volcanic stone. And then we had like the roller that's also made out of the volcanic material. And that's what you're using to grind the peppers and the spices. So we got down, I'm next to her, and we both over here. She would start it, and then she would let me continue, and then she would finish it. It took us, I want to say, about an hour, a little over an hour, because she was also explaining like why she's using certain ingredients, and I was also asking questions like, why are you using this type of stove? What's the benefit of this material? Why are you adding in the chicken now versus then? Things like that, because I'm interested in the entire process. Afterwards, I got to sit down and eat it with some tortillas from El Comalote. Yo, them tortillas, I understand why Guatemalan people eat it with every dish, because it is that freaking good. Okay? It is. Y'all heard it from me, y'all. Guatemalan tortillas, top 3. They number 1 for me. Top 3. And so as I was sitting down enjoying my meal, I also got to ask Gabriela about just her backstory, just like talking peer to peer. I was like, how did you come into this work? Because this is what got me into wanting to learn traditional skills throughout the diaspora, traditional culinary practices, all of that. And so we really got to chat, and we talked for like 2-3 hours. We was really on some homegirl conversation, like really talking, and just to really hear her backstory of not even eating many of the foods that she is now a proponent of. Like, and she was just like, I didn't eat it because it just wasn't there. I was used to the fast food, like the takeout stuff. And I'm like, that's real. But then she also, like Chef Deborah from Diaca, was like, wait, we have all these things in our country. We have these foods, these crops. Why aren't we using those? And again, for that, I commend her. I'm like, because you could have easily just stayed on the path you were on, but you allowed a question to guide you and open your mind and your life experience up. So much so that now you started this whole restaurant that's employing all these women utilizing an ingredient that is very important to your culture. So for that, I was like, y'all got all my support. So on the way out, I of course bought multiple packages of tortillas. I was like, I need about 6 dozen of these, okay? And she was like, don't get too many because they won't last. Like, they're frozen, but you gotta eat them like real quick because they fresh. So after El Comalote, I basically spent the majority of the residency sketching in my sketchbook, hanging out with Bella, my other co-resident. We would take walks and like hike up, well, I call it a hike, but there was like a viewing area in Antigua that you can hike up and basically see all of Antigua. Beautiful. I did have pictures, side note. I did have pictures of this trip, but unfortunately my phone got wiped. And it's not funny, but I've cried enough tears over this. Okay, and I lost all but like 6-7 pictures that I had saved from that trip. My phone was not supposed to be wiped, so it was unintentionally wiped. I've forgiven this person. But that is why I don't have many pictures to share from that trip. And that's also why I need to go back. So there's that. But Antigua is a beautiful city. Along with hiking and all those things, me and Bella also went on a coffee tour. Guatemala is also top 3 for me in coffee. So we go on this coffee farm tour run by De La Gente Collective. And it's a collective of farmers and their families who, every time you book a tour, you're going to one of their farms. And then at the end of the tour, you have the option of buying the coffee. And it also the tours end at their home where they'll roast and prepare like fresh coffee for you. Guatemalan coffee, and this is the thing, I'm not even that big of a coffee person. Like, I'm not somebody that I'm like, I need to have my cup of coffee, I need my energy. No. But when the coffee is good, the coffee is good. Okay, and I'm talking about black. Like, it don't need no cream, nothing. Now, I will put some sugar in there, but even when it's that good, it don't even need that half the time. So we go to this De La Gente coffee farm tour, and it lasts, I want to say, a couple hours, where it involves us hiking. And it was a small group of us. I want to say it was about 6 of us or so who booked this tour. And so we visit one of the farmers' coffee farm. And we get the chance to really like be up close and personal with the coffee plants. So we're picking it, we're tasting it. We're getting the whole rundown of how the coffee is grown, harvested, how new plants are planted and cared for. And then the farmer also talked to us about the benefits of being part of this collective, as opposed to what happens in many countries is, especially when big coffee brands will come in, many of the coffee farmers will work for those brands. One, they're not getting the return that they should be getting. Like, they're not getting paid what they should be getting paid. And then a lot of the beans are all just mixed into one pot, is what they were telling us. So you're thinking you're getting medium or dark roast when you could be getting like burnt coffee mixed in with young coffee beans, mixed in with mature coffee beans. Like, it's a whole thing. So the farmer was telling us how being part of this collective, one, they have more ownership of what they produce, and the quality is like, they can control the quality. So of course I was like, y'all getting my money. And I definitely left there with about 2 bags of coffee. And another thing I learned about myself too is that hiking is not for me. So what I love about Antigua is that it is a city where you could see the volcanoes. Okay, the volcanoes are all in eyesight. Now, many people go to Guatemala to hike those volcanoes. I, on the other hand, was walking up to this farmer's coffee farm right? We had to hike up a little hill. The way I was out of breath, I was like, y'all, hiking is not my ministry. So that volcano is going to stay right where it's at and will never feel me walking up the side of it. But I appreciate the elevation and being able to see how the soil benefited from the volcanic ash that would blow over from the volcano and settle onto the soil, which is why I believe a lot of things that are grown in Guatemala taste so good, because their soil, first of all, it literally looked like kind of gold, because when I picked it up to really examine it, it has these golden specks in it. When you really like move it around in your hand, I was like, yo, this is gold. Like, y'all literally got some gold in this soil. But everything I ate, everything that was produced in that soil was delicious. And so I got to see the role that the volcanoes play in like the food and the flavors that it was producing. So for that, I was very appreciative of the coffee tour. So me and Bella also did a chocolate, not tasting, but we went to a space called Chocolate Antigua, and it's in San Juan. So it's about, man, I want to say it was like 20 minutes on the public transportation bus. So one of the staff members came with us while we visited the chocolate space, and we got to see how the chocolate was made. And of course, I purchased some because, again, chocolate is one of those food groups that I will always devour. And what I liked about the chocolate that I was tasting in Guatemala, now I also learned that the more of the chocolate that's produced is in a different region of Guatemala. So it wasn't in Antigua. I believe they said it was closer to the coast because the humidity and the temperature was better for that. And what was also cool about their chocolate was that they formed it into disc. And so when you bought it, you would get like 4 discs stacked on top of each other that were sealed and packaged together. And the discs were like about a little bit bigger than the palm of your hand. So they were a nice size disc, and you could just like dissolve it in hot water or, something like that, or just eat it like that if you want to. But that is one place that you should also visit. Now, to the places that I ate at, because, I was doing my culinary research. Jiaca is a must. You have to go there. Give them all your money. Okay, no, give them some, because then you're going to give El Comalote some of the rest. Now, if you are someone who is vegan, there's this space called Once Once. Delicious. First of all, delicious. Everything I ate in Guatemala was delicious. So I'm just going to tell y'all the places because everything was good. Once Once is a vegan cafe. Not necessarily a cafe because they're open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I tried them, I want to say each of those times. So I had breakfast there, I had lunch and dinner there. Great every single time. The portions are amazing. Another place was a spot called Venga Venga, and their food is amazing. Their space comes alive more at nighttime, but I also had them at a pop-up at another artist space in Antigua, and they were doing like a brunch pop-up. Another place was Barenga Leña. That space is run by, I want to say like 3 chefs who, they're like friends who came together and opened up this spot. And they do serve some Guatemalan food, but they also, it felt like street food meets indoor dining. So it was stuff that I was like, yeah, I could see myself like getting this as something, a handheld like snack size if I'm walking down the street. But it's more like the portions are bigger, so it felt like, yeah, I should be eating this inside. And the food was good. It was like some Asian stuff there because they had some dumplings. They were very good. It was like pork dumplings, amazing. They were using the tortillas from El Comalote in one of their dishes, so that was cool too to see like the cross section. And Gabriella and Chef Deborah, So the woman who owns El Comalote and Chef Deborah who owns Yaka, they both know each other and they collab too. So that was another thing that I was seeing. I was like, I'm liking how the people in the creative spaces, whether it was art, culinary, what have you, how they were like collabing with each other. But Barenga Leña, amazing. I went there no less than 3 times. Drinks was on point, everything. Oh, speaking of drinks, y'all, I left Guatemala obsessed. Obsessed is not even the word. So chicha is a fermented beverage made from corn. And Gabriela put me onto them when I was doing the workshop at El Comalote. When I tell you I was throwing them back. I was like, and I'll take another one and another. If I could take another one for the road, I would. What I really liked about it, one, I enjoy fermented drinks. I'm not really on the kombucha train like that. I enjoy more fermented drinks that are like, so chicha is corn based. Then I had another one. It was a sorghum beer when I was in Ghana. Like those, I was like, yeah, I like the, like I can get down with this. Kombucha, I was like, I don't know what it is, but I was like, it's okay, it's cool, I can rock with it. But chicha, and one thing I also told Gabriela is that I appreciate that a lot of the things I had there, so like even the corn products, chicha, the producers and the stewards of these things, they weren't like, oh, how can I scale this? How can I make this global? How can I have this like in North America, Asia, Africa, everywhere? Like they were really like, we grow this so we can consume it and then we share it. And then we repeat. It wasn't this whole, I have to scale it and then I have to make it into a franchise so that it can go, so we can open up a store in North America. Like, I really appreciated that coming from North America. And when I travel and I see people who steward these practices and they aren't wanting to like scale it, I'm like, this is a breath of fresh air. Like, finally, because I will come back to Guatemala for that chicha. Now, yes, I know I can have chicha in other places, but that chicha at El Comalote, I was like, this is worth a flight. It is worth a flight and a car ride to Antigua to come get this. And for me, I love that I can cherish that experience there. I'm not like, man, I wish I had this in the state. No, I wish I did, but I don't need that. Like, please don't try to like create a whole funnel where now you have to like figure out how to bring it here, and we don't need all that. Another thing I had that it was my first time trying was eucalyptus wine. Of course I know what eucalyptus is. I have a dry one hanging in the shower. I got oils with eucalyptus in it. I've used shea butter with eucalyptus. I know eucalyptus. Have I ever had it in wine? No. But when I was in San Juan, after we tasted that chocolate and we stopped by, it was a small family run space. And they were like, it was legit in their house. When I tell you that eucalyptus wine, I had to bring a bottle back. I was like, now this, can I put this in the check-in? She was like, yes, the size, like the small size I got, she was like, that one, yes, you can bring that in check-in. When I tell you that eucalyptus, it didn't even, because you know, when we think of wine, sometimes we have a perception of wine. It was like, I felt like I was drinking something that my body needed. Like the eucalyptus was so present in it that I was like, I really think this is healing me. Everything I ate in Guatemala was healing me, okay? The corn, the chicha, everything was healing my body. Which I'm sorry, I strongly believe that when it's good food that is tended to with love and attention, it can heal your body. There is one last space I'm going to talk about before I get to the budget. And it is called Eco Farms GT, which stands for Eco Farms Guatemala. I found them through an internet search I did because I was like, before I leave Guatemala, I want to see who is growing the food and what spaces they're growing in. And so Eco Farms GT was started by two twin brothers, and it's in really the heart of Antigua. And it is a farm that is the layout and the design of it is based off of Mayan and Aztec farming traditions and techniques. So one of the owners, because I got a little tour first, and he was saying how they spent 3 to 5 years just talking to Mayan and Aztec shamans, scientists, farmers, historians about the traditions of growing before they even opened up the farm. And that, I was like, see, that's some dedication. I appreciate that. But they were like, we wanted to make sure we were honoring, and they're Guatemalan. And they were like, but we still wanted to make sure that we got it right. And I got to tour the spiral gardens, the aquaponics area, the food forest area. I mean, the space was freaking luscious. And on top of that, they had it was like a animal rescue program. So they would find, like, whenever they'd see dogs or cats, like stray dogs or cats on the streets of Antigua, they would take them in, nurse them, and like put them up for adoption. So there was this cute little dog running around called Taco. He was the cutest thing ever. But he was part of their adoption program. So that space, and they also have a cafe attached where they utilize a lot of the produce that they grow. And y'all already know it was delicious. And so I got the opportunity to go back there and volunteer on a different day. And because it was walking distance from the residency where we were staying at the residency house. And so I got to volunteer. And then that same day, they had a community event where basically community members came together. There was like a clothing swap. There were artisans and craft people who were selling their things, from stickers to jewelry to clothing. It was beautiful. There were people selling food too. And then Eco Farms also, along with their cafe, they have like a store, like a little market where you could also buy a lot. Think of it like a farmer's market, but it was like there all the time. So you could buy whatever produce they harvested and other like handmade value added products. So salves, I got some salt, because another fun fact about me is when I travel, I collect salt. So some people may bring back like souvenirs or things, like I do that too, but I also buy salt everywhere I go because I like, one, I am someone who can eat salt. So, because I know there's some people who's like no salt or salt free. I'm like, bring on the salt. I don't overdo it now, but I find that I learned this after, because I've been collecting it, I want to say at least 5-6 years now. So I've had salt from the coast of Africa, salt from Italy, salt from Guatemala now, salt from various places. And what I like about buying salt from these places is you can taste the waters that the salt comes from. And usually you only need like a pinch because it's that nutrient dense. Unlike the table salt we got here in the States, I'm like, the trash. But when you get the salt right from the place where it is from and harvested, like you saw where it came from and you see the people harvesting it, it just, it hit different. And so I bought some of that. I also purchased some other items from the store. The granola was finger licking good. And so when I go back to Guatemala, I will be going back there to volunteer and weed and all the things. Because that space, I'm like, I really love what y'all are doing. It really is a community space. So they set it up so that people in the neighborhood, just any Guatemalans, like it's made to feel welcome. Like you can come in here, you can ask questions, whatever you need. We'll figure out resources on how to get it to help the community. Amazing space. And besides all of that, I was mainly walking the city also. So when I wasn't eating, when I wasn't making work, when I wasn't learning from a steward or a farmer or something, I was walking the city. And that is one thing I love to do when I travel, because I feel like you really get a vibe and a sense of the rhythm of the city and the space and the people. I would basically just open up my maps, see the route to get there, like kind of halfway memorize it, and just walk the blocks, looking at the people, the businesses, greeting people on the way. And I was doing that in the morning, afternoon, late at night, feeling safe the entire time. Safety is never a concern of mine when I'm walking cities. One, because I also have street smarts. I ain't stupid now. But I highly encourage people to walk cities. Yeah, I could have taken an Uber or, the local transportation, but it was nice to really see the streets, the curvature of the roads and the side paths and the back ways, all of that. I love that stuff. So definitely walk the cities when you travel, if you can, if that's accessible for you. Actually, and a good tip is that Antigua is very much not accessible if you are in a wheelchair. Well, I'll say parts of it, because the area where the residency is in, it's beautiful, but it's definitely, there's cobblestones, there's uneven sidewalks, which isn't a problem if you can manage it. But let's say if you have a walker or you're in a wheelchair or something, that would be more difficult to manage if you're not in a vehicle or being driven around. Other than that, I would say that's the only caveat to the city of, like, it's not really accessible if you're not being driven around or something, but it is a beautiful city nonetheless. Now on to the budget. How much did this trip cost me? So the residency itself, I believe it was a little over $1,000. I want to say I maybe paid $1,200, $1,300, probably not even that. I want to say like $1,200. I really need to keep track of, write these numbers down, especially since I'll be sharing these now on this podcast. But it was like a little over $1,100 because I added on the textile component. So you could do it to where they're not setting you up with the textile instruction and going to the textile museum and things like that. And it would be, I believe, like $1,000 or maybe a little bit less. Now, the prices may go up because, our economy, so people got to adjust their prices. But to me, that was pretty affordable. For the experience that I got, the price was great, at least for me. So I knew I was going to go, I want to say in January, and the residency was in June. It had to be January, February that I was like, I'm doing this residency. And so I had like a good 5-6 months to save. So if the residency is like $1,100, $1,200, you can just divide that by the 5-6 months and you could put that aside each month. Or what I like to do is either if I can't pay it in full at the time, I'll do a half and half. Because one, I like to get things paid for and over with so that I don't have anything to worry about as the date is approaching. So I believe I did that. Like I did a half now, half like right before the residency started. My plane ticket, I want to say it wasn't that pricey because I flew out of Florida. Because my family's in Florida, whenever I have to fly anywhere that is geographically south, usually I'm flying out of Florida or somewhere near Florida. So Atlanta or something like that. Depending on my destination, I'm flying out of Florida because it's easier. And if you got to go to Central America, it ain't nothing but a hop, skip from Florida. So I believe the ticket, I think it was like maybe $400. Like it wasn't maybe $300. And this is round trip. Like it wasn't pricey at all. Cause the plane ride was only like a couple hours, like from Florida. So, but depending on where you flying from, that'll be different. Now I would say it was like we in the $1,500 range. And then the rest of it was just spending money. So I save accordingly because when I travel, I like to not splurge. I like to spend money on the things I really want to experience. So I'm not buying, I mean, I did buy some, no, I actually didn't buy souvenirs per se, because I stopped doing that long time ago. Like, buying the shot glass, the things, nothing wrong with that, but that's just not my style. I tend to buy things that are functional now when I'm buying things for people when I travel. So you're either going to get a tablecloth, or you're going to get a napkin or some pants or a shirt or a cup that you could drink out of all the time. That's how I usually like to buy if I'm bringing things back home for people. A majority of the budget that I saved, the spending budget, was for food. Now the food was it was decently priced. Like, if you ask me, everything I paid for, I was like, this price makes total sense. I didn't feel like I was paying high prices for anything. Now, Diaka, because Chef Deborah is very well known, has won many awards, her restaurant is, of course, priced at that standard. What is it, $60 a plate? No. Because I did the 12-course option, and I think it only came out to like $100 or something. Like, it was like a standard type of, if you go to that type of restaurant, what you're going to be paying for. And because I also work in the food industry, I know how to budget when it comes to eating out. So I know what I need if I'm trying to eat more street food, or if I'm trying to eat like more casual, or if I'm trying to eat more like fine dining. And I believe Diaka would be placed in fine dining, even though I was like, yo, this food is good. Like, I think because for me, fine dining sometimes can feel inaccessible, but a lot of what she was making was like ingredients from Guatemala. So I was like, I guess if you gotta categorize it, it could be fine dining, but it's good, nourishing food. Hers was the only restaurant that was like a little higher price, but I had already known that going there. So most of my budget that I saved went to food, and then some of it went to textiles. So I was purchasing textiles directly from the women in the space where I was learning how to do the textiles. So I went back on a separate day, or I believe it was my last day that I was there, and I just bought up a whole bunch of stuff. Support the stewards who are stewarding these works, support the chefs, everybody, the writers, everybody who's upholding culture, like, support those people. But Guatemala is a country that I didn't know my soul needed it. I went from not really knowing anything, well, I didn't know anything about Guatemala. Yes, I had met Guatemalan people, but I didn't know anything about the country. Like, it never was a part of my research. So I went from that to having this deep love and appreciation for the country, which is why I'm going back. Because Guatemala, oh man, I'm like, I didn't know I needed Guatemala in my life. Okay, I didn't know. And that is one of the joys in doing the work that I do, is sometimes you just, you be over here studying and researching this thing, and then this thing pop up here on the right and be like, hey, come over here, and you just didn't know you needed it in your life. And that is how I forever feel about Guatemala. So if there are any Guatemalans listening to this, I love y'all. I love y'all culture, respectfully. Ain't no appropriation going on over here. But I just love the people, everything, amazingly, which I didn't expect anything less. But oh man, Guatemala has a place in my heart. I mean, it had me being like, asking my mom, like, you sure we ain't got no Guatemalans in our lineage? That is how deeply I love that country. So I would definitely be back. And for those of y'all who want to do these types of trips, I encourage you to like put some money aside, even if it's just a little bit here and there. Even if you just do one trip in a year, these trips are doable and we can do them, especially as artists, as Black folks, as creatives. We can do, like, we can travel. Travel don't always have to cost you an arm and a leg. And a lot of the connections that I made here in Guatemala during this trip, I feel like it'll lead to even more connections, to where one, and I'm a big proponent of like really building intentional relationships when you travel, because that lessens the cost of whether it's housing, whether it's meals, whether it's paying for skills that you want to learn. Like, and it's not so much as like, oh, you got to try to get a discount from people. But when you really build relationships, you start to find other ways to pay for what it is that you are wanting to experience. And I encourage everyone to really think about some places that you want to visit, why you want to visit them, some things, some skills you want to learn and why you want to learn them, and put it out there into the universe. There may be some places that might come to you that you never had on your list, and they will be exactly the place that you need to be when you need to be there. So on that note, I'm gonna see y'all in the next episode. Stay hydrated, moisturized, and at peace within yourself.